Sweden was recognized worldwide as a very wealthy, developed country with an excellent quality of life and, above all, a very peaceful country. It was even among the 10 safest countries in the world. However, in recent years, Sweden has had one of the highest rates of gun deaths in all of Europe. In addition, hospital waiting times are among the worst in Europe and the quality of education has declined across the board. But without a doubt, what worries Swedes most is the issue of crime and violence. In fact, last September, the situation reached the point that Sweden is preparing to deploy its armed forces to deal with the wave of violence across the country. Swedish Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson said, "Sweden has never seen anything like this before. No other country in Europe is seeing anything like this." The whole situation is driven by gang turf wars, personal vendettas, and a large pool of available youth. Most of them from immigrant communities arriving from other countries in Africa and the Middle East, such as Syria, Iraq, Iran, and Somalia. In fact, the leader of one of the largest gangs is Rala Majid, who arrived in Sweden as a newborn in 1986 after his parents fled Iraq. So the questions are, why is the idea of multiculturalism destroying Sweden, and why in other rich countries is immigration successful, but in Sweden it failed? Before World War II, Sweden was a linguistically and culturally homogeneous country. From 1871 to 1940, the average number of immigrants was only 6,000 per year, and most of them came from Germany, Denmark, and Norway. However, in recent decades, the idea of multiculturalism entered the political mainstream in Sweden, and it began to receive a large number of refugees from outside Europe, making it one of the countries that received the most non-European immigrants in relation to its population. The proportion of immigrants of non-European origin increased from 2% to 15% from 1985 to 2015. Due to this rapid immigration, Sweden had a population growth of more than 1% per year between 2015 and 2019, well above normal levels for industrialized countries. This at first glance seems a very positive thing, as most European countries are feeling the effects of their aging population. On the one hand, because there are fewer people of working age, which means that fewer and fewer workers have to support more and more pensioners. And on the other hand, the aging of the population means that more people are demanding more complex and expensive health services and treatments. So attracting immigrants is one of the strategies used by developed countries to compensate for their aging populations. However, this strategy did not work in Sweden because many of the working-age immigrants simply do not work. In other words, since Sweden made the transition from an immigration based on attracting workers to an immigration based on refugees from very different cultures, integration into the labor market is complicated and they end up being excluded and dependent on state assistance. In the past, the integration of immigrants into the Swedish labor market was not a problem because most of the immigrants came from linguistically and culturally close countries and because most of the jobs were simple and characterized by well-defined and repetitive tasks. Unlike today's labor market, which makes higher demands on education, language skills, and work experience. Anyway, the fact is that immigrants in the past had a high employment rate, while today most immigrants have difficulties integrating into Swedish society and finding a job. In 2015, the employment rate of people aged 20 to 64 was 82.9% for those born in Sweden, while for those born outside Europe, it was 53.6%. This ultimately translates into a good percentage of immigrants or refugees who are at risk of ending up in a state of long-term exclusion. And when a percentage of immigrants cannot integrate into society or the labor market, either because of language, educational level, or culture, that is when gangs begin to form in communities, either to be part of a social group or to earn money. Therefore, it is not strange that criminal gangs have a very easy job recruiting young marginalized immigrants, which ended up increasing crime and violence in Sweden, since most of the crimes and murders occur among immigrant communities. Even former Swedish Prime Minister